What's up? Yep. We'll get the hat in there. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to just start. I'm going to talk about 5 things LSU fans should be excited about going into this season. And then 5 things LSU fans need to be worried about. It's going to be very interesting this year. There's a lot of high stakes for 2021 and having a hell of a performance from this team. And Coach Orgeron, this staff, they have a lot to make up for after what happened in 2020. I don't think Durante Jones is going to be that bad of a hire. I think he's going to be actually a really good coach. I think he's going to succeed at LSU. I think he's going to be a fantastic defensive coordinator here. Whether he wins a national championship here or not, I'm not sure, but I know he's going to be a success. D-line coach Andre Carter, I know he's going to be a success here. It's just, how could he fail with the tools he has, the knowledge he has, 25 combined years, NFL experience. I believe it was 13 years playing, 12 coaching so far for Andre Carter. With all of those amazing D linemen there at LSU, it's a slam dunk. Blake Baker is really the only, will he succeed at linebacker without that star name, without the, adequate depth accordingly to the mainstream, whereas I see a lot of awesome gems there at linebacker. It's just up to Blake Baker to have the cojones to choose Josh White or Devontae Lee and have those guys play out there alongside most likely who will be either, two of Micah Baskerville, Damon Clark, or Mike Jones Jr. So you'll probably see Damon Clark have every opportunity to have a comeback year at linebacker. You're going to see that type of stuff from Blake Baker, because I think he's going to have to trust experience here at LSU, being his first year. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting. I think he'll lean on experience, but I hope he plays a lot of those younger guys at linebacker. But that's the thing, is there's so many questions here that I'm even like going off onto tangents with just how many crazy things there are going on at LSU. But 5 things LSU fans should be excited about. 5 things LSU fans, Tiger fans should be excited about for 2021. Well, let's take a look at the list. Number 1. Well, actually, I guess we'll say number 5. Returning the starters, especially on the offensive line, that was fantastic. Getting all 5 starters to come back from the offensive line, that was fantastic from Coach O. But at the same time, all 5 of those guys needed to come back, except for Ed Ingram, to boost their draft stock, in my opinion. So I think it wasn't too hard of a sell to get those guys to come back, but it still was a ton of work during the 2021 recruiting cycle to also recruit your own team and get those guys to come back. But it was fantastic. And then you got Andre Anthony to come back after his best year at LSU. Still has a lot of draft stock that he could maximize. A second senior year would not hurt Andre Anthony whatsoever. He can only succeed more as a leader, as someone who, Coach Orgeron just called clearly the leader of the defense the other day. So getting the leader of the defense to return is a huge it's a huge boost for this team. Andre Anthony, we'll see if he's clearly the leader of the defense, as Coach O says, because that's quite a statement. But it's impressive. I saw him taking really fringe offensive. It's not offensive. Really fringe outside linebacker Dylan Thompson, taking him boxing at Beat to Sleep, LJ Morvant's boxing shop there in Baton Rouge. And Andre Anthony was having him box, and and Ollie Gay was there with him. It was pretty cool. And there's just a lot of team things going on like that with these returning starters. And that's what is so key about bringing back these leaders. And that's what I think LSU didn't have enough of last year. I think some of those returning seniors weren't ready to be leaders last year. It's a fair statement after the performances last year. It's a fair statement. I feel like some of those guys maybe weren't prepared for what was going to happen. I think 7 or 8 wins was just going to fall out of the sky because we were entitled to them, because we were LSU and we just won a championship, just destroyed everybody. And I think some of those returning starters perhaps took the season for granted, took the schedule for granted, and we paid the price. Of course, there was just really bad coaching, of course, that was going down. But when you have 20 of 22 starters returning who have an eye for redemption coming into this season, that's incredible. I think that's a huge testament to what Coach O's doing. I don't think he's ever had a team at LSU have that many returning starters. I would love to go back and look exactly and see exactly how many, what was the max amount of returning starters he's ever had coming back in an off season. What's the most? And I think it would probably be the second most besides this year. Would probably be 2018, and we still lost, Devin White. Nick Brissett, our leading rusher in 2018. So you lose your leading rusher and your best linebacker just immediately right there. I mean, Coach O had to desperately convince Grant Delpit to stay in 2018, I believe. But, I think Grant Delpit won a national title and a Jim Thorpe Award and all that type of stuff. And I think he wasn't finished at LSU. So I think he's only a sophomore. But I think he was going to go to the NFL draft. But that's just another example of that great returning starter recruiting from Coach O. He was able to get guys like that back. And I think because of, that 2018 offseason, getting those guys to come back, as well as, of course, the people who were going to return anyway, like Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who really wasn't a starter at that point, but a quasi-starter in a way. Justin Jefferson, big returning starter to return. I mean, he needed his draft stock to be boosted anyway because he was almost unheard of from a lot of these GMs and scouts. They didn't see his gutty, bruising receiving play that just moved the chains constantly. I mean, he did so much work for the 2020. Not for the 2020, for the 2018 Tigers. It was just incredible. He was just gutty. Just go back and turn on the Texas A&M game. Point is, getting back returning starters is like one of the top things I look at as far as like LSU's chances to win a national championship, and especially in this day and age, especially with the pandemic and all that type of stuff, you need leaders and guys who are there ready to show freshmen the way. Especially this freshman class, they're so exciting, they're so brilliant. They have so much potential, and it needs to be maximized ultimately. And I think having those returning starters come back, that does that. I don't think it does it automatically. There's going to have to be a lot of hard work, a lot of intense competition that goes into it during the spring. And spring football will be nuts. I believe the competitions will be crazy for a lot of positions: safety, linebacker, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, of course, offensive line, all over the place. Right guard, the right guard battle is going to be insane. Right tackle, even Austin Deculus. I mean, all of these returning starters, they know coming back that they could be usurped by a freshman. They could be usurped by a freshman in spring. They're not getting any automatic starts from Coach O here. But having these guys as an option, as a leadership pinnacle to rely on, a pillar for LSU to rely on, it's huge. I think Coach O, this was probably even more important than the finishing the end of that 2021 class strong. But of course, the way he finished it is just all to Coach O, getting Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, are you kidding me? Anyway, moving on. Number 4 for the top 5 things LSU fans should be most excited about for 2021, offensive firepower. I mean, from the quarterback position to the receivers to the running backs, it's a joke. There is an illustrious amount of talent. 4 quarterbacks who could start. I mean, I've heard a lot of people trying to suggest that Garrett Nussmeier as a freshman doesn't have the capabilities to start. I don't buy that. I don't buy that 100%. I don't think he's. If I were to bet on it, he's not going to be the starting quarterback. He's not going to win that job. That's just what I would bet. But you never say never with a talent like that. Garrett Nussmeier could easily go in there and really put all of these guys under pressure. Not win the job, but easily go in there and put all 3 of those top guys under significant pressure. But at the quarterback position, I mean, there's so much talent. There's so much talent. It's across the board. I mean, Max Johnson, what he did last year, finishing the season, finishing a lot of games where LSU got their asses handed to him, and he finished them strong. And Max Johnson was brilliant. You've got to give him a shot at that starting job because of the way he finished such a bad season. The way he cleaned up so many messes, it seemed. I mean, we were about to get shut out by Texas A&M. We didn't really deserve to because the Butte touchdown should have counted, but we were about to get shut out by Texas A&M. And Terrace Marshall's final game in LSU uniform would have ended without a touchdown. Instead, it ends with a touchdown at least. Of course, another red zone touchdown. He's just a red zone machine. Max Johnson saved LSU's face there. It was brilliant. And then he just gets better. He just played from strength to strength. And it seemed like when he finally was given the keys to the car, he just went off. And I feel like, hey, he's 2-0 as a starter. I can't really ignore that. That's very interesting to me. He threw, I think, one interception. Other than that, no turnovers, no real huge mistakes. 6 of 7 on fourth down opportunities for 3 touchdowns and 1 rushing, 2 touchdown passes to Kayshon Butte. Just unbelievable. And another third down red zone touchdown to Kemontre Bradford. Just clutch on a lot of those opportunities. But there's TJ Finley. TJ Finley has the best third down percentage of any of the quarterbacks. 41%. It's not the best. It's only 2% higher than Max Johnson's and a lot higher than Miles Brennan's 23%. But TJ Finley, he had a great season. I think for just a minuscule amount of time, it seemed like he was just gonna ascend. And then when one turnover happened, just the first turnover he ever had, I believe, after the South Carolina interception, where we were comfortably in the lead, he starts making these turnovers, the pick 6 against Auburn, and then the fumble. I believe they scooped and scored, or maybe scooped and ran into the red zone at least. It seemed to like traumatize him almost, and Finley couldn't recover, and he was completely the victim of a bad offensive line protection scheme. And I don't think it was 100% on TJ Finley. I think he should be given every opportunity to win the starting position back because, as my man, the Big Chocolate did, even said, he does have an unbelievable, he probably is the best, most polished, most flawless, effortless arm strength of any of the quarterbacks. And that's saying a lot. But when the ball comes out of TJ Finley's right hand, it's a thing of beauty. But the receivers, so deep at the receivers, so deep. You got Kayshon Butte, who's walking the walk, talking the talk, is the number 1 guy. You got Jenkins, who knows? Could he be the number 2 guy? It seems like, he's sitting at the table for that leadership council. He's doing a lot of other things. Joe Burrow even was taking him under his wing when he was a freshman. Joe Brady really, really paid close attention to him. There's always a feeling about Jure Jenkins, and I have that same feeling too, especially when he just, right before the season, I saw this practice. I saw his practice tape where he just seemed like he was making these really disgusting just catches, like he just wouldn't stop, like he's just picking on. I think it was Eli Ricks was one of them, and then Cordell Flott was another, and he just was picking on both of those guys, and I think Jordan Tolles was another one who he picked on, and he's making the most outrageous catches, and the guy, he just has an unbelievable receiving body. He could be very, very special. I don't know exactly how. I don't know where to put him on the radar, on the scale, Jure Jenkins. He's so intriguing to me. he could literally blow the top off and get 10 plus touchdowns, 12 plus touchdowns this year. Maybe even more than that. He could actually assume the number one position if, by leadership. It's all really all on the cards. He's very interesting. He's case displayed and demonstrated for him, and he's not any Chase's level, but he's on his way to being a really good Coy Moore type receiver. Different things. He out through you. He can make these unbelievable jump ball catches. He's really gutty at moving the chains, making those tough catches over the middle. Very strong route runner, very polished route runner. Quick burst off the line. There's something about Coy Moore where you can't jam him so easily, and I feel like he could get that number. Palmer. Right, we wrote this article about the receivers today. It'd be the starters who could be in those positions. It's Trey Palmer. Trey Palmer was someone we wrote a lot about. Or was receiver, I believe, the third out of Louisiana. And downs, were unbelievable downs. One each year in the 2019 team with that brilliant kickoff against South Carolina. And he made some really good smart catches. But can Trey Palmer put the whole package together? Only 114 yards as a sophomore. I expected him to be more around the 600, 500-yard mark for Trey. He has those type of abilities. So it was kind of a tad disappointing when he failed to pop last year. So I think this year he'll have every opportunity to really succeed. It's up to him to put that package together and show the country what he's got. There's a bunch, but I'm not going to talk about every single receiver, on the roster. We talk about most of them, if not all of them, in that piece. And we're going to continue to discuss the LSU receivers. But there's many contenders. Don't look away from these freshmen either. These freshmen, Chris Hilton Jr., Brian Thomas Jr., Jack Besh. Jack Besh. He just dunked it the other night for St. Thomas More basketball and was just hanging on the rim like Shaquille O'Neal. This guy is a straight up savage, a straight up G. Beshy is awesome. So LSU has just this never-ending carousel of firepower, and a lot of it's unproven, a lot of it's untested, a lot of these guys we have not seen on the field. But if utilized correctly by these coaches, Jake Peets, DJ Mangus, all these guys who claim to know the ins and outs of that 2019 offense that they're reinstalling, I think if they can install that offense up to their own expectations, according to their press conferences, I think LSU will light teams up for 40 points on average a game. It will be something special. I don't think it will top or even come close to topping 2019's offense. But with the weapons LSU has, it could definitely be a frenzied just fireworks festival out there. And then you got these unbelievable running backs. You got like 7 deep running backs. I look immediately at Ty Davis Price, who was just ran up the middle into a poor offensive line, poor blocking scheme last year, when it was like, run this guy outside. I don't know why he's just thought of as a bruising runner. This guy has unbelievable speed on the outside, pace off the edge. Some of his best runs in 2019 were when, we designed the plays to run him off the edge or pass to him off the edge. Some of his best plays in 2020, correspondingly, were when the offensive line was absolutely demoralized. His blocking scheme was just destroyed in front of him. Bodies were laying everywhere like it's a scene out of Black Hawk Down, and he would just morph it to the outside, take it to the outside, create his own hole to the outside like great running backs do. That's why I think Ty Davis-Price deserves to have that shot as the starter. He hung in there when LSU needed him last year. He made the big plays when LSU needed something. He single-handedly won the Arkansas game for us. He was going to absolutely put 200 yards on the Florida Gators, but he got hurt. Someone smashed his ankle with their helmet, and his metatarsal, I think, was the part of the ankle that was hurt. I'm not sure. I haven't really been creepily digging into that type of thing, but Ty, he's healthy. He's 100%. He's back. He's doing the fourth quarter drills. He's nailing stuff. He's nailing it. And I think Ty is going to have a really good season. I think John Emery Jr. is poised. He could also have a fantastic season as well. John Emery Jr. is the speedier version, the more shiftier version. But don't overlook Ty Davis-Price's shiftiness. This guy he has some disgusting moves in his arsenal. We just haven't had the opportunity to see them enough. John Emery Jr., he'll hit those holes fast and kick it out, bounce it out to the edge, bounce it out to the sideline. And he's got great finishing ability, as we saw with that diving touchdown. I think it was against Vanderbilt when he did that awesome diving touchdown. But yeah, John Emery Jr., he I wouldn't call his sophomore year a failure either. It will be viewed that way if he fails to exceed that mark his junior season, same with Ty Davis-Price. If Ty Davis-Price fails to get over that 600, 700, 800 yard rushing mark, if he's not a 1,000-yard rusher, a lot of people will critique both him and John Emery as failures. And I don't think that's correct. I don't think Ty Davis-Price and John Emery Jr. need to have both over 1,000 yards for LSU to win a national championship. I think even if they had around 700, 800, and then one of them had 600 to 500 rushing, as long as both of them had at least 150 to 200 receiving, and then they throw in a few touchdowns receiving, and then at least have 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns, LSU is going to be fine with those two as the reliable starters. In fact, you could put both of them on the field at the same time, either side in the shotgun, of the quarterback in the shotgun. Why not do that type of stuff? Why not? This is the offense where, last year I thought we were going to be doing things like that with Eric Gilbert, where you could be moving this guy all over the place, putting him in the backfield even, where he's very explosive once he gets that momentum. He's able to gain gain some type of momentum going up the field. And LSU just were hurling horrible passes near him and just forcing passes into interceptions. It was just were not utilizing the talent the best way they could across the board. And I think a lot of that's going to be different this year. And you're going to see running backs who are going to be involved in the passing game as well. So you're going to see, Ty Davis-Price, who had that receiving touchdown against Arkansas that was crazily called back when we know that was a touchdown. He shows it too in his game that he can pull off those brilliant catches and the yards after the catch. He did it against Auburn in 2019. He was torching people against Oklahoma as well in 2019. He can show that in the passing game. John Emery Jr. showed a little bit. He showed flashes, not as much as Ty, but a little bit. Kavontre Bradford, though, Trey Bradford, he showed some excellent receiving capabilities and qualities that were just interesting from a running back. He has some speed that is take it to the limit type of speed where, in Texas high school, it just seemed like the way he was scoring was he was just making one move, two moves, and then was just gone and wasn't even touched. There was so many touchdowns I watched of his film where he was just gone, and people were just miles behind in the atmosphere of his infinity. People just couldn't even come near Trey Bradford. And so he fits into this offense well because he's multidimensional. He was used more as a rusher in Texas high school football because they could just plow him ahead and they could win games that way. They weren't really too. This wasn't an offense that was that creative. Now you saw him with that receiving touchdown on third down, very gutty play against number 6 Florida. Basically to win the game in a way, to set us up to have a chance to even win that game in the final minute with that 57-yard brilliant field goal through the fog by Cade York. Without that touchdown by Trey Bradford, we don't do it in fourth down. It would have been high pressure. It was already pressure enough, but Max Johnson with that sick screen pass throw just in the flat, that little pass. Trey Bradford, who knows what he could do this year? He could take the first spot. He could take the second spot. He could be the third stringer, as I expect. But I think he's going to take a major stride in 2021, and he's going to be a big option off the bench. He will get reps. He will get minutes for LSU. Josh Williams, the walk-on, he had a fantastic end of the season as well. Josh Williams showed plenty of burst. He showed plenty of speed, a lot of hustle, a lot of just grind through the tackles, between the tackles. He wasn't he wasn't afraid. He was a violent runner, and I appreciate that in a running back. Just you're gonna get hit, and he welcomes it. But in a way, when he welcomes it, he delivers more than the impact that he's receiving, echoing the way that Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for LSU. Because at one point against Georgia, I remember Clyde injuring about 4 or 5 guys in that game alone who were trying to tackle him, just plowing over them, running them into the ground. Clyde was a beast, and I feel like Josh Williams takes right up after that, and I feel like so does Ty Davis-Price, so does John Emery Jr. That is the way Kevin Falk is going to coach his running backs room. And I think LSU's running backs room last year missed Tommy Robinson. They missed that guy's influence, and I've heard that from the mother of a player at LSU. The running backs missed Tommy Robinson's influence. Now, with Kevin Falk having another season under his belt, his first, his debut year as a college coach, as a coach anywhere, really. I think maybe some growing pains will be out of the way, and I think maybe he'll have a great season in coordination with Jake Peets, who has a great understanding of the running back position, as well as DJ Mangus. They both were running backs coaches at one point, and Jake Peets has a fantastic record of coaching running backs to great success in multidimensional offenses. You just stop right at Christian McCaffrey. I believe Christian McCaffrey. He led. Let's look this up real quick. Christian McCaffrey. I swear it was 2017, 2018, where he led the nation. Yeah. Led the nation in receptions, all-purpose yards. Let's see here. He became the first white running back to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season since Peyton Hillis. That's hilarious. But yeah, basically Jake Peets coached him to leading the league, I swear, in receptions and all-purpose yards and touchdowns. Just on a Pro Bowl year, of course, and just went off. I think he was Offensive Rookie of the Year as well. He was incredible. And Jake Peets had a big role in his development. He was basically a rookie. I think he was a rookie that year. But one second. Anyway, sorry, my dog was barking. Just trying to figure out why. It's probably just the postman or the FedEx person. But LSU has offensive firepower in every position, it seems. The quarterbacks, receivers, running backs. It's just the offensive line has got to pull their weight. That's it. Then number 3 for 5 things for LSU fans to be excited about, defensive potential. There is potential in every position on the defense. I know we were 124th ranked. I know we were shitty. I know we were a pile of stinking, heaping dog crap. I know we were a bad defense last year. I know we allowed 9.98 yards per play. I understand all those statistics. But the exorcism has taken place. The demon is gone. We have forsaken the vibe. We are free. Durante Jones is here, and he's brought his bourbon to relax our minds, our soul, and to drive us towards a championship. I feel like Durante Jones is the perfect coach to coach this group of Tigers. There's so many talents here, and he understands how to teach and how to develop talent. It's all over in his background, putting guys in the Pro Bowl left and right. In Minnesota, he was fantastic with learning a lot under Coach Zimmer there. There's a lot of Zimmer terminology, and that goes back to the Miami days through a crazy, incredible path that Coach Orgeron appreciated on the radio. He was mentioning that about Durante Jones, and there's a lot of he's got a lot of amazing players at his disposal here in every position, and it's going to be interesting who he picks to start, or even get some time in some of these positions. For the defensive line, for me, it would be Ollie Gay, and then you got Jaquelin Roy at DT. And then you would have another DT, Mason Smith, as a freshman starting. For me, he is that good. If he proves it in spring and summer and he stays injury-free, put him on the field. Let him do his thing. And then you also at the other DE spot, B.J. Ojulari, I feel like he's got to start over Andre Anthony while giving Andre Anthony those reps as well. But you've got to start B.J. Ojulari. He's too good. He's got to be on the field. I feel like that's the lineup for that D-line, but there's so many other combinations that's far from the end of the story. You could put Andre Anthony in there, Jacoby and Guillory, and his buddy Jaquelin Roy together at DT, then with Ollie Gay. You could mix and match it any way you wanted to. Philip Webb in there at DE. Eric Taylor at DT, Joseph Evans at DT. You've got so many different varied skill sets along the defensive line. At linebacker is where you're going to have a lot of trouble. And I feel like that's, defensive line, I feel like that's going to take care of itself. I feel like Andre Carter is going to know exactly what to do with those guys. And there's just so many options, especially because of those amazing Savion Jones, Landon Jacksons of the world coming in. Xavier Carter, already early enrollee with Landon Carter and Mason Smith. A lot of D-line early enrollees. It's fantastic. That's why linebacker is so important to me. Linebacker is where LSU could be in some big trouble. There's so many unknowns and so many just interesting, intriguing questions at the linebacker position. There's a lot of youth. There's a lot of unproven, a lot of unknown. There's a lot of bad from 2020. There's a lot of good from 2019. And then there's some good from 2020. The good from 2020, Micah Baskerville. He came on at the last few games. When he finally was given a chance to play. Micah Baskerville was always competitive every down. He seemed to give everything maximum effort, and he actually understood his gap. He actually had good, interesting, sound gap control where he didn't just over aggressively, I'm going to go attack the quarterback. He would survey, he would check it out, and then he would read and react, whereas everyone else was running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And he made a lot of really good stops last year because of that, and he's shown well. He's shown well. But a double senior year will do him beautifully because he needs to raise that stock for the NFL. It will do him wonders. But also at linebacker, Damon Clark. Is this the year he returns? Is this the year he comes back to form? Because in 2019 he was incredible, but that was in a 3-4 defense when he was playing outside linebacker. So my question is Damon Clark only good in the 3-4? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think Damon Clark can do the 4-3, but here's the thing. LSU are going to also be doing 4-2-5 most of the time. Can he handle being just maybe this only 2 linebackers in the middle? At the nickel position, I could see us a lot of times, reading the situation and sticking that third, linebacker, being a nickel guy at the nickel, just to give us some more girth and strength on there, not let us be so unbalanced at the linebacker position, give us some robust strength in there and I over the middle of the field. And that's why I think they went into the transfer portal and got Mike Jones Jr. to have that guy that has some multiplicity to cover tight ends, cover receivers, as well as, be a run stuffer if need be at linebacker. And that's why we can do the 4-2-5 this year. I think Mike Jones Jr. is really inherent to what Durante Jones, Blake Baker, Andre Carter, and Coach Ed Orgeron want to do with this 21 defense. Mike Jones Jr. I think is going to start. We broke the story on Mike Jones Jr. coming to LSU. We broke that story. And I think he might end up being the most important transfer for LSU this year. It's pretty hilarious. He picked off Justin Fields in the CFP. Just picked him off right in the red zone. Prevented another Ohio State touchdown. It was a big play that could have given Clemson, a little bit of hope. But he has that experience. He's been in the CFP. He got his butt kicked by LSU in the championship game. But then, hey, he also was on the team that beat Alabama too. So here's the thing. Mike Jones Jr., he's an Alabama killer. And but he also understands the power of LSU. So when I saw his name on the transfer portal, I was like, that guy's coming to LSU. I did some digging, and someone's like, yeah, put him on the source. It was like, yeah, put him on your transfer list. I think that's a good name. That's kind of a cool insight of you because, yeah, maybe Blake Baker knows. Yeah. And so I put him on the list, and then, I think it was only the next day. He's like, yeah, LSU are pursuing him. So, yeah, that's a good pick. And it was like, well, it just makes sense. He's got the body, he's got the measurables, and he's got the experience. He just hasn't been given the chance because Isaiah Simmons was in the way, but he was always Isaiah Simmons' understudy. And now he's going to come to LSU, and perhaps Mike Jones Jr. can do that here. But we'll see. At safety, there's a lot of different dudes there, and it's very interesting because I think it's going to be the most competitive spot, most competitive battles for those two spots this offseason. Sage Ryan wants to start. Derek Davis Jr. wants to start. I mean, hell, he's an early enrollee right now. Those two really want to be in those starting lineups for LSU. But there's so many options. Todd Harris could come good after a rusty year, after his ACL tear. He still forced 3 turnovers, but he took some horrible angles on tackles, some bad whiffs, made some mistakes like a lot of LSU defenders, but so did Mohampton, but Mohampton had a fantastic 2019 season, and I think Mohampton has the talent to recover from what went down if he's put into a more confident position. And that's where Durante Jones's intelligence in coaching safeties comes from. I think that's why it's a very, very astute hire from Coach O. I think he's going to do wonders for the safeties, and I think we'll see a lot better, more highly improved safety play at LSU. Matthew Langlois, Matthew Langlois could be a starter for LSU as a freshman. He reminds me of a young Craig Stelz, and he's actually also a really damn good running back too. But yeah, he's I think LSU are pretty loaded there when you mention a guy like Matthew Langlois as well. Quarterbacks, as we already said, they're 4 deep there. I mean, Miles Brennan, Garrett Nussmeier, TJ Finley, Max Johnson. But right now, it looks like Miles Brennan is the undisputed number 1 guy. The team is behind him. The community is behind him. The fans are behind him more than they were in the offseason leading up to the 2020 season. It's hilarious. I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad it's happening. But, about time. But it took an injury, I guess, for Miles to get the respect he deserves. But finally, he's got the respect he deserves. People were calling him fat the other day, and then now today you see pictures of him looking all shredded. And the pictures that I saw, where I said I think it was a week and a half ago, I said he looks like he's around 240 now, and 238, and no one listened to me, and there he is. But number 5 for 5 things for LSU fans to be excited about: weakened rivals. Totally weakened rivals. Alabama are leaking talent left and right, losing 3 linebackers to the transfer portal. You got Ali Cajo, Kevin Harris, Ben Davis. Then they lost DB Eddie Smith. They lost kicker Joseph Bulavas. D lineman Ishmael Sofser. All of these guys weren't, intrinsically huge, players for Alabama. They had a combined 40 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and 22 of 29 field goals made for Bulavas. But now they've also lost 11 quality coaches and dominant recruiters. Offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian's gone. Head coach at Texas. Running backs coach Charles Huff, who was once recruiter of the year. He's now head coach at Marshall. Tight ends coach Jeff Banks. He went with Sarkisian to Texas. So did offensive line coach Kyle Flood. He's at Texas as well. Defensive analyst Charlie Strong went back to his buddy Urban Meyer's Jaguars. Major Applewhite, he's the OC at South Alabama. Butch Jones is the head coach at Arkansas State now. Their previous grad assistant, Gordon Steele, he's offensive line at South Alabama now. Rob Ezell, tight end assistant at South Alabama. Former GA Andy Kwan is Arkansas State's tight ends coach. And last year's quarterbacks coach A.J. Milwee, he has also joined Steve Sarkisian at Texas. If you thought Coach Orgeron replacing the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, linebackers and defensive line coaches were if you thought that was a monumental task, that doesn't even compare to that task. Alabama has a hell of a lot to replace, but they're not the only ones. I mean, Texas A&M have lost a ton of talent. Texas A&M have lost a ton. They just had one of their best ever seasons. I think it was probably their best ever campaign in the SEC West. But they lost. I think it was three different guys in their front seven. A huge key receiver, Jamon Hobson. 3 offensive linemen, Dan Moore, left tackle, right guard Jared Hawker, and center Ryan McCollum, and of course quarterback Kellen Mond. They lost a ton. A huge pieces of their team. But then Florida, Dan Mullen's Gators lose many to the NFL draft. Heisman candidate quarterback Kyle Trask, wide receivers Tony and Grimes, and then of course Kyle Pitts, linebacker Ventrell Miller, and of course their biggest loss for LSU, because he helps us out so much. Their biggest loss has to be cornerback Marco Wilson. He was such a threat to LSU, threat to LSU. Yeah. He was coming after your shoe. Coming at you. Marco, he's coming at you. Meanwhile, Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M, they're just like Dan Mullen's Gators. I think they're going to have really bad seasons this year. I think Alabama's also going to have a bad year. I think Alabama, for their standards, I think Bryce Young is going to be fantastic at quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be enough. So that's 5 things for LSU to be excited about. These SEC powers having to replace starting quarterbacks, number 1 receiving targets, key offensive linemen, simultaneously suffering the departures of crucial coaches or glaring misses all along their defense. Coach O's Tigers are not only in the perfect shape to take advantage this year, they simply must if they want to take control of the SEC from Saban's Alabama anytime soon. No time better than now, really. But overall, there's a great vibe going on at LSU right now, and the program, I feel, has maintained kind of a relaxed focus kind of going into this season. And we'll see what happens over the coming days. But my mouth hurts, and so that will be all. Bye-bye. Go Tigers.